Despite being married 5 times, she passed away without anyone by her side. Here's why. This captivating look at Hollywood's golden age follows Jane Wyman, a mystery actress who nearly became First Lady. Wyman's life ended in sad seclusion despite her Academy Award triumph and 5 marriages, including her most famous to Ronald Reagan. We will explore her personal and professional life, her struggles, and her lasting impact on Hollywood and American history to determine why she died alone. We'll illuminate the incredible path of a lady who went through emotional upheaval and died alone, despite her popularity and achievement via exclusive interviews, rare films, and meticulous study. The world welcomed Jane. On January 5, 1917, Jane Wyman was born into a family of Gladys Hope Christian and Manning Jeffries Mayfield. Their newborn daughter, Sarah Jane Mayfield, captured Manning and Gladys's hearts from the first moment they saw her. At the time, Jane's father worked as a laborer, and her mother worked as an office assistant. Although not affluent, their family was by no means impoverished. Somewhere in the center was where the Mayfields found themselves content with their existence in St. Joseph. Up until that point, everything was going well. Jane's mother had passed away before she realized, along with the life she had known. Everything started to fall apart. On the exterior, the Mayfield family seemed to be a normal, happy American family. Their house was lovely, and they had a comfortable existence. But as many of us know, things are not always as they appear. The announcement that Jane's parents were divorcing altered the trajectory of her life. Jane was 4 years old at the time and had difficulty understanding why her family was no longer together. She had no idea that things would soon become a whole lot worse. Jane's father died 3 months following the separation of her parents. It was too much for Jane's mother to manage and a lot to take in. For what reason do we say that? Essentially because she relocated to Ohio without her little daughter. Orphaned at a young age. Her mother had deserted her, and her father was deceased. Jane had transitioned from a normal existence to an orphan at the age of 4 in a matter of months. That regrettably meant that she would have to go into foster care. Jane was forced to begin a new life and a new family, none of whom were hers. It was time to bid farewell to the life she had known and adjust to the new one she was handed. It so occurred that her foster family was the head detective in St. Joseph. She wasn't given much time to make the many adjustments she needed to make. I was raised with such strict discipline that it took years to reason myself out of the bitterness I brought from my childhood, claims Jane. High school wasn't for her. Jane had to adapt when she went to California in 1928 with her stepmother. This transition appeared to invigorate her, in contrast to others in her life. Even at 11, Jane was certain she wanted to live in the city of stars. She tried to not only reside there, but also to resemble the locals. She was so more dissatisfied than ever once they returned to Missouri. Being a celebrity and starring on the big screen was all she could think about. Her desire to go to California only deepened with time. She chose to drop out of high school one day, deciding to stake everything on that line. You can guess where she was going. It was harder than she had expected. Jane risked everything when she decided to drop out of high school and follow her goals. However, she didn't account for the possibility that it wouldn't work out. She thought that someone would notice her and make her a celebrity when she arrived. Regretfully, it never occurred. It wasn't even close to what really did. Jane would take much more effort and hard work to become a celebrity than she had thought. Jane was prepared to put in the effort, which gradually began to pay off. Though she did get a few odd roles in the film industry, none of the 20 were given credit. Nobody recognized her, even though she had been on the big screen. Lying to get what she wanted. Jane believed she would become a celebrity overnight after coming to California. She needed to find another source of income since it didn't work out. That was the second difficulty she had to tackle. She was living in a city without adult supervision and a source of money at the age of 15. She needed work, and she needed it quickly. The issue was that she was still too young to work for a corporation. The only thing Jane could think of was to make up her age, and that's just what she did. The fact that it succeeded is what surprised me the most about the whole situation. Not only did she get everyone's belief, but she also secured employment as a switchboard operator and manicurist. Jane was close to realizing her dream. One of them, anyway. Young and in love. Jane was still waiting for her big break after almost a year. Though she battled to fulfill her dream of becoming an actor, it seemed that she had succeeded in fulfilling her desire to find love. She had fallen in love with Ernest Wyman, a guy she had met. They chose to exchange wedding vows and formalize their love in 1933. We understand you're probably asking how Ernest thought it was okay to wed a 16-year-old. Jane had misrepresented her age on the marriage license and employment applications. She seemed to be 19 years old to her husband and all the guests at their wedding. Jane had deceived once again to get what she desired, but this time it was short-lived. There was no warning. Jane was never raised by a guy who cared about her or wanted to be her partner. Her stepfather was quite strict, and her father passed away when she was a small girl. Her foster home was a place where love had no place. She didn't want to let go of the guy she met when she moved to California, since he satisfied all those requirements. Jane entered her marriage with little awareness of the commitment it would need, since she was young and inexperienced. All of this was evident when, after only 2 years, her marriage collapsed. Very little was known about the couple's decision to separate, and there were also few warning signs. But the age difference could have played a role. Things were getting better. Jane had lived in California for 5 years when she was 20 years old in 1937. Jane continued to persevere despite making appearances in 30 different movies and yet not landing her big break. She finally saw her name on the marquee, a testament to her hard work. Jane gained notoriety after receiving accolades for her role in Public Wedding. Her aspiration to become a celebrity was becoming nearer. She decided to pursue her romantic dream once again at the same moment. She had been separated from Ernest for about 2 years, but now she felt ready to return to the public eye. Their desires differed. Living in California after Jane's relocation had proven to be challenging. Still, it seemed as if everything in her life was going her way for the first time in years. Both her work and love life were improving. Jane walked down the aisle in 1937 for the second time in her life. Myron Futterman, a dressmaker, was at the end of the aisle this time. Regretfully, her subsequent marriage proved even more disastrous than her first one. It seemed that Jane and Myron couldn't agree on several critical issues, leading to their termination after only 3 months. The primary difference between Jane and Myron was their desire for children. I hope you'll talk about it before getting married. We're not trying to pass judgment. Sparks began to fly. Jane had been married and divorced twice by the time she was 20. She had not given up on seeking love, despite popular belief. A sneaking feeling tells us it had anything to do with her time filming Brother Rat. Jane was already having a hot date with another guy as she was settling her second divorce. Jane encountered a guy who could permanently alter her life when she was employed on the 1938 movie set. He went by Ronald Reagan and was going to become a U.S. president. Jane's romance with Ronald progressed swiftly, much like her previous marriages. Jane was desperate for love. Reagan and Jane got together fast. By 1940, the pair were making an engagement announcement. The world adored seeing them together because they created the ideal pair. Many people were unaware that their engagement had a sinister ulterior motive. It turns out that Jane had not, as many had assumed, just fallen into love. Rather, she threatened to end her own life if Ronald did not propose. Ronald didn't want Jane to hurt herself, even if he loved her. Although their relationship had been hurried, it seemed successful for a time. Combining her career and personal lives. It is well known that combining your personal and work lives may be dangerous, but Jane didn't appear to give a damn. She wanted the whole world to know how happy and in love she was. Thus, in 1940, the couples behaved like newlyweds beside one another. Jane supports her husband in An Angel from Texas when he dupes a rich rancher into contributing to his Broadway show. Yes, it was all a show, but maybe the pair was used to tricking others. They were not impoverished, but rather because they thought they were the ideal marriage. But the sight of her spouse on screen merely brought to mind earlier private moments Jane had broadcast on TV. Intimacy that broke a record. An actor or actress you are dating must be aware that they must have personal relationships with other people. If a character has a romantic partner, they must convince the viewer. This needed to be done in the 1940s, even if it wasn't as violent as some movies we see now. Jane had been married to Ronald for a year, but all that was on people's minds when they saw Jane was the record she was holding. Jane had to make eye contact with Regis Toomey, her co-star, while filming You're in the Army Now. The two broke the record for the longest kiss on film by doing this. Jane kissed a married guy for 3 minutes and 5 seconds, all the time everyone was filming and watching. Starting her own little family. Jane's husband recognized that her record-breaking kiss was necessary for her work. Not only did he not seem to be fazed by the record, but he chose to star in another movie with his wife. Given that Jane could pursue her passions alongside her beloved, it was the ideal scenario for her. Because it wasn't just the two of them, filming Tugboat Annie Sails Again alongside her husband was quite touching. During the whole shooting period, Jane was expecting their first child. Though difficult, it was a family affair. Hollywood in those days didn't wait for anybody, not even expected women. She had some demanding directors. Every acting role that Jane was offered was accepted. She thus collaborated with various personalities and made appearances in over 80 different films. Jane took the part regardless of the role or director. That, however, meant that she had to handle many odd requests. For instance, in The Yearling, Jane had to portray a pioneer from the West. But there was only one issue. Although Jane has skill, her complexion is unsuitable for the role. Thus, the director forced her to sit in the sun and become sunburned. Can you picture the sunburn that Jane and many others received? Never mind that she cherished her light complexion. The film affected her family. Jane had made many film appearances when she began shooting on The Yearling in 1946. It also meant that she had collaborated with many different producers and directors. However, none of her previous jobs had had the same impact on her personal life as The Yearling. Aside from her sunburn, which always hurt, Jane's personal and professional lives collided. Her daughter avoided communicating with her for 2 weeks after the film's viewing. Even if we don't know the specifics or the reason for her anger, we can only presume that the movie contains a hint. Her role required silence. By now, Jane was a well-known figure in the film business. Even though she had collaborated with many individuals and starred in several movies, she hadn't yet found her big break. That is, until 1948, she was cast in the Belinda McDonald role. In the 1948 movie, Johnny Belinda, Jane portrayed a deaf and silent victim of sexual assault. It took 6 months to be ready for the job, which included very little talking. Who would have imagined this persona would get her the attention she desperately needed? Her quiet won her a medal in addition to drawing attention to herself. She took her role too seriously. Jane believed she needed to perform to the best of her abilities to win an award. All she needed to do was remain silent. Finding different methods to display her ability, Jane had spent months getting ready for the part of Belinda. Her labors paid off in 1949 when she was awarded the Academy Award for Best Actress. Jane was shocked and in disbelief when she received the honor. Ever since she was a little child, she had dreamed of this day and likely composed several speeches in anticipation of this day. Her acceptance speech, however, defied expectations in every way. Jane said as she took the platform, "I accept this very gratefully, for once keeping my mouth shut. I will try it again." Jane didn't agree with her husband. At last, Jane had accomplished her 2 primary life ambitions. She was happily married and had won an Academy Award for her performing career. Had what she had ever desired. However, she began to dispute with her spouse, so it didn't appear to last long. Though it seemed like Ronald was only now realizing her dreams, Jane had always known what she wanted to do with her life. Jane didn't want to be connected with the way he was going. Ronald desired to enter the political sphere and rise to the presidency. Not only did Jane not comprehend politics, but she was also not interested in attempting to understand it. She claimed to know nothing about it, despite her husband's desire to be the nation's leader, if it were the only thing. A mother's worst fear. It wasn't only disagreements over opinions that caused problems for Jane and her husband. To be precise, the couple experienced a catastrophe in 1947 that would rock even the strongest of relationships to its foundations. Despite the enthusiasm and anticipation that undoubtedly accompanied this happy news, Jane's pregnancy that year ended tragically. Unfortunately, Christine, the prematurely born baby, did not survive the delivery and passed away later that same day. According to rumors, the tragedy created an unhealed divide between the grieving parents, and things only got worse from there. Another marriage come and gone. The pair wasn't as happy as they led others to think when their marriage was examined more closely. There were many causes for this, the primary one being politics. Jane and Ronald were essentially different, whether or not her interest in politics played a part. Her spouse was a Democrat, but she was a Republican. That wasn't the reason their marriage failed, however. Some insight into the further reasons for the couple's breakup was provided by Ronald's memoirs. The novel claims that soon after their marriage, Jane became tired of her husband. Both she and the light had gone, but Ronald also contributed to their breakup. The book also clarifies that he was envious rather than pleased with his wife's prosperous acting career. The pair decided to end their relationship in 1950 after realizing it wouldn't work. She was never the same. Jane was prepared to attempt anything and everything to succeed in the film business. She just wanted to reach the top, and at last, she succeeded. But it seemed her personal life collapsed, and her profession reached its zenith. Jane got divorced from her third husband and received her Oscars simultaneously. It was a lot to take in, and the actress seemed deeply affected. Those who worked with her said that Jane was transformed by all the changes in her life. She was suddenly a nightmare, and her fears came through on the stage fright set. Jane was meant to portray a straightforward maid in the 1950s movie, but Jane applied cosmetics so she wouldn't seem unattractive beside her co-stars. Jane was a fussy eater. Jane acted completely out of character while on the stage fright set. She would never have dared to defy the director's orders before. She was now putting out demands left, right, and center. London served as the shooting location for the 1950s smash. Though Jane couldn't handle the local cuisine, it was a lovely location. Jane wanted the best rather than just taking what she could get. Director Alfred Hitchcock sent steaks and roasts from the United States to satisfy her. You could question why he would do that. Properly, he said, "Ladies must be well fed." Unpopular among her co-stars. It doesn't imply that Alfred liked working with Jane, even if he brought her favorite dishes on board. Regretfully, he wasn't alone. Her co-stars weren't delighted about Jane's developing difficulty as a working partner. Marlene Dietrich, who starred beside her, wasn't hesitant to voice her strong views on Jane. "I heard she'd only wanted to do it, stage fright, if she were billed above me, and she got her wish. She looks too much like a victim to play a heroine, and God knows she couldn't play a woman of mystery. Miss Wyman looks like a mystery nobody has bothered to solve," the actress asserted in an interview. This is particularly troubling because Dietrich was the one who encouraged Jane to come out of her shell and get noticed after realizing how much she struggled with her shy nature. Everyone had to listen to her. Jane had alienated two extremely significant individuals while working on the stage fright set. She behaved like a recalcitrant kid and pushed them away. If only she'd listened to her advice and returned to her former self, Jane. But things weren't so simple, and Jane's demeanor became worse. Director Irving Rapper and actor Kirk Douglas were busily resolving their artistic disputes during the 1950s production of The Glass Menagerie. The two discussed it and tried to reach a solution, handling the situation like grown-ups. Their talk had little to do with her, but Kirk thought that Jane had crossed a boundary, and it was rich coming from Jane to tell her co-star to listen to his director. Jane's life was a roller coaster. Film industry insiders began to realize Jane had calmed down by 1952. She was reverting to the Jane they knew and loved, slowly but definitely. They soon discovered that her actions were motivated by love rather than her knowledge of wrongdoing. Having finally found her fourth spouse, Jane was excited to spend her days with him. Regretfully, all of it was just a dream. After only 2 years of marriage, the couple's enchantment started to wear off. They had reached a crossroads in their relationship and made the decision to get a divorce. Considering what transpired next, we can't help but believe that they may have attempted to resolve the conflict. Another marriage, another failure. Jane Wyman only ever had 4 spouses despite being married 5 times in her lifetime. This is a result of her previous union with her ex-husband, Fred Karger. After 6 years, the couple was again in each other's company. In 1961, the couple remarried and seemed to be in a happy relationship. Had their divorce been an error of judgment the first time around? The response is negative. This marriage also ended in divorce, thus they ought to have followed their intuition. Jane and Karger's marriage dissolved in the span of barely 4 years. Karger was stunned to learn of their breakup since the couple seemed to have resolved their disagreements throughout their marriage. He said that Jane walked out one day. In search of less drama. When Jane decided to move to television after How to Commit Marriage, she did so because she thought being on a smaller screen would mean having to deal with less drama. Moving to television didn't hurt her career, and it didn't come with less drama. By 1969, Jane had been involved in Hollywood and its drama for almost 40 years. Not only did everyone know who she was, but she also won awards for her talent. Jane had achieved everything she had ever dreamed of, and she wanted less drama. Shifting her focus onto her career. When her 5th and final marriage failed, Jane took it as a sign that she wasn't meant to find stability in love and chose to find it elsewhere. Although she again turned her attention back to her career, Jane found solace in her newfound Catholicism, which she took very seriously. She saw her relationship with her faith as something she couldn't mess up, and she expected those around her to do the same. When the lesbian romance on the 1980s television series Falcon Crest failed, Jane forced the writers to change it to a sisterly bond because it didn't align with her faith, meaning she didn't want to be anywhere near her. Jane didn't put up with nonsense. Jane's most well-known television role was that of Angela Channing on Falcon Crest, a highly successful 9-season series. Regrettably, working with Jane was a nightmare for all 9 of those seasons. Not only did she have power over the writers, but she also had a strong influence over her co-stars, forcing anyone who dared to challenge her to find another job. Her co-stars referred to her as having an iron grip, causing many to leave the set without even trying. Nevertheless, one person didn't fear Jane. Feuding on and off the set. As a result of the unfavorable reputation that she had earned during her time on set, not only was she despised by everyone, but she was also feared. Her co-stars mostly kept their distance from her. Lana Turner, who played Angela's mortal enemy, Jacqueline Perrot, was one of the few co-stars who refused to let Jane take advantage of her. Speculation on set was rife. When Lana's time on set ended, she became a media informant rather than an actress. Although Lana and Jane didn't speak at the time, they communicated through media responses. Lana claimed that Jane was mean and resentful of her ex-husband Ronald's success as president. Jane quickly refuted these claims, saying, "It's not because I'm bitter or don't agree with him politically. I've always been a registered Republican, but it's bad taste to talk about ex-husbands and ex-wives, that's all." She got involved in politics. In both the 1980 and 1984 elections, Jane voted for Ronald Reagan, When asked why, she responded that he was a great, kind, and gentle man. Her vote seemed to be more about the man and less about politics, which was consistent with her character. Despite her failed marriage and disinterest in politics, Jane supported her ex-husband in the only way she knew how. Never too old to get arrogant. As you can imagine, Jane made a lot of enemies while she was on Falcon Crest. Although Lana was the primary antagonist, at least the two women avoided speaking to each other. This was a far cry from her feud with Robert Foxworth, which was much more verbal and vicious. Based on rumors, the two stars insisted on receiving equal treatment. At one point, they even measured the dimensions of their dressing rooms to ensure they were the same size. As a result, when Robert got the director's license, Jane also obtained one, even though Robert had real-world experience while she did not. Jane decided to go quietly. In 1993, Jane Wyman decided to retire from Hollywood completely because she had grown tired of fighting with her co-stars and was getting too old for the drama of it all. She had spent most of her life surrounded by co-stars, producers, and directors. Now, however, she was alone and chose to embrace it. Although she had managed to rid her life of the drama, she was unable to rid her body of the illnesses she had been neglecting. She suffered from crippling arthritis and diabetes. Sadly, at the age of 90, Jane gave up the struggle and passed away. Despite her passing, her legacy endures through her body of work.